there's a statistic going around that's really like an urban legend, and I would like to debunk it. This idea that lesbians somehow have the highest rate of domestic violence.
The lesbians find it very hard to stay married because there are two women involved.
I've heard this time and again, and first of all, let me just tell you it's not true. The statistic that shows that lesbians have like a 44% rate of having been domestically violenced, that comes from just out of their lifetime. Yeah, it's only like 35% for straight women, but that includes all the times those women who now identify as lesbians got beat by men when they still used to date them. If you take that out, it goes down to about 30%. So lesbian rate is 29 to 30% lifetime incidence of some woman beating them, whereas straight women have a 35% lifetime incidence of getting beat by their men. And let's also realize that when lesbians are doing it to each other, that 30% of lesbians who that's happened to, it's another woman hitting you. It's not a man hitting you. That makes a pretty big difference. Women are allowed to hit each other, aren't they? I mean, I wouldn't hit a femme. That's wrong. But if two femmes want to hit each other, I don't see the problem there. If two butches want to wrestle, that's their that's their thing. That statistic always struck me as crazy because, I mean, I've been an out lesbian for decades, and I've been in more than a dozen relationships lasting anywhere from 3 months to 3.5 years. And no one in any of these has ever come close to hitting each other. It's never been even remotely on the table or anything like it, except for that time when I had a dom. My second thought whenever I first heard that statistic was like, well, I looked into it because they would always say lesbians have like the highest rate of domestic violence experience, but they would always say like domestic violence and rape and stalking. They have the highest incidence of all that. And I'm like, wait, you're putting all of it together. You can't just include stalking. That's probably most of it. Anyway, it turns out it's not most of it, or when people are getting stalked, they're also getting beat at some point or whatever. But that was my initial thing, was like, well, you can't include stalking among lesbians. Of course, lesbians are going to be the highest, but it turns out there were other things wrong with this statistic anyway. Also, bi women actually have the highest rates of having been abused in relationships out of anybody. And I'm like, what's going on there? What's the deal with if you're bi? Is it because the man gets pissed that you want to leave him for a woman, or I really don't know. So, look, if you're bi, if you're lesbian, if you're straight, let me know if you have experience with any of this or thoughts on any of this. I'm very curious to hear other people's experience. I don't know if like my life is such a outlier, but again, it's not. It's not true the lesbians have the highest rates of domestically violating each other. It's just for some reason, the lesbians who date men for a while before going gay have a higher rate. Oh, maybe that's what makes them gay. Maybe it's like the ones that get abused by men then go gay. And then when you ask lesbians if you got beat in your lifetime, you're adding all those ones who turned out gay. Because look, I know that's a controversial thing to say, that some women get turned gay because of the bad men in their lives, but like that's not true for all lesbians. I've been a lesbian forever. I've never been with a man, or at least not a penis having man. And like I just gay, like I have the gay genes. It's, you know what I mean? Like I was probably going to be gay in just about any lifetime, but there are some women who it seems, or at least bisexual, and then after enough for men, they go, all right, fuck that shit. I'll just be on the lesbian side of things. So maybe it's, and then they just if they call themselves lesbians, then, because they're like done with men, then they get put into that who gets domestically violenced more statistic. And by the way, it's not just like douchey men who are sitting there believing this lie and going, look, women beating each other more than we beat them. You sure you want to be a lesbian? Oh, lesbians are beating each other. It sounds like gay queer organizations are, it's just like they'll bend over backwards. Like, check this out. They hear the statistic, they don't look into it, they don't realize it's about the lifetime, and that, again, if you control, like, they're sitting there going, oh, we need to look into this because it must be because of stereotypes and heteronormative expectations that lesbians don't realize that they're so much danger at the hands of other women just because it doesn't conform to their idea. Like, nah, dude. Read the study. I mean, yes, again, sometimes women hurt each other, and sometimes women hurt each other badly. I'm not saying, please don't think I'm like dismissing the fact that it happens sometimes, but it's just this idea that keeps getting spread around, this like zombie statistic, the idea that lesbians are more domestically abusive than men. No, that's not true. Why don't we know that queer relationships have such a high rate of abuse? Have we never noticed that we're being beaten? I guess we just don't notice it because it doesn't look like a heteronormative version of things. So I've never noticed that I don't know why I'm doing a British accent. Oh, violence is portrayed as something that men do. It's portrayed as being more male. Look, there's so many misconceptions about violence. No, violence is mostly male. Yes, women can be violent too. We usually don't do as much damage because we're weaker physically than men. Might be stronger spiritually, by the way. Please don't think that I'm like not a feminist because I can admit that we're weaker than males. But yeah, it's not a misconception. Dude, of course it happens sometimes. But males are much more dangerous than females. Much, much, much more. That is not a misconception. It's not a stereotype. It's reality.